But I mentioned inflation this week. They announced the Consumer Price Index for August. It was slightly lower than expected. Year over year, we're up 5.3%. Economists expected 5.4%, so it wasn't really that significantly below what was expected. Up 0.3% month over month, following a 0.5% increase in July. So inflation is going on. Now, we always say that these numbers are fudged. It very much underestimates what a real inflation is, and we'll talk about some of the inflationary things that are happening in different industries in just a second. But they understate it by at least 100%. So if they're going to tell you it's 5.3, it's probably 11, 12, and it could be even greater. And I'm not surprised that we're seeing August and probably September a little lower than expected, because I think they're trying to keep the cost of living adjustment for Social Security under 6%. Right now, it's looking like 6%. I'm still comfortable with that estimate. We have one more month, which is September's CPI. Unless it's significantly lower or higher than what it's been the last couple of months, we're going to see about a 6%, maybe 6.1, maybe 5.9% cost of living adjustment, the highest increase we've seen in 15 years. So for those of you who depend on Social Security, it could be a significant issue for you. What we don't know yet is what the Medicare Part B premium is going to be increased to. And we won't know that for a little while now. So we'll keep an eye on that, let you know when we find out what's going on with that. So inflation, as we've been talking about a lot, is not going away. The Federal Reserve, keeps telling you that it's temporary, keeps interest rates at zero, is doing nothing to battle inflation. And now they say they're going to taper, or there's indications that they may start tapering their money printing and bond buying, the quantitative easing they've been doing for some time, starting by the end of the year. I'll believe that when I see it. Right now, they're buying $120 billion worth of bonds, namely Treasury bonds and mortgage bonds. And it's a number that is just incredible. Most of us don't really understand numbers. We just hear numbers. It sounds like a lot, but what does it really mean? And I've gone through this exercise with you a number of times. What is $1 billion? $1 billion is 1,000 million. 1,000 million. That's an incredible amount of money. Now, the Federal Reserve is buying $120 billion worth of bonds. 120,000 million. Now that puts it into perspective when you say, okay, 120 billion, what does that mean? It means it's 120,000 million. There's not a stadium big enough in the United States to hold 120,000 people, but you could imagine 120,000 piles of $1 million being created out of thin air and buying our debt. And this has been going on for a long time. So when they talk about tapering, they're talking about, okay, instead of buying 120, maybe we buy $110 billion a month for a while. Then maybe we bring it down to 100. Now, Goldman Sachs is coming out and saying that they believe that the Fed will start in November and December and go down $15 billion a month until they get to zero. I don't believe that's going to happen because there's so many unknowns here. I mean, the Fed, as soon as you have the next variant of the Delta or quadruple Delta virus, the Mu virus, whatever, and the economy starts getting shut down again, they're going to say we can't taper. And you got to understand that, we have a debt-based society. We live on debt. We cannot. I mean, we stop borrowing money, the whole thing falls apart. We're a debt-based economy, and basically the entire world now is a debt-based economy. It only works if we continue to go further and further in debt. Now, we'll talk later on about the debt ceiling. That's starting to become a topic that you're hearing a lot about because we only have a few more weeks before we will have, a crisis. Republicans are saying to the Democrats, hey, we're not getting involved in this. You control the presidency, you control the House of Representatives, you control the Senate, you guys do it. But by saying that, all you need is one defection in the Senate and just a few defections in the House by Democrats, and it's just not going anywhere. But I've seen this game before. I've watched this movie, and we've raised the debt ceiling so many times over the years. It's just a joke to even have a debt ceiling. Because every time we come against the ceiling, they make the ceiling higher. And we go through this drama, this whole debt drama, for weeks before. It comes down to the last moment of the last day. The markets start getting crazy. And then finally it passes and they increase it $2 or $3 or $4 trillion. And then a year or two later, we have to go back and do it again. But it's a debt-based system. And, you know, we had $3 trillion in debt in 2020. We're going to be close to that again this fiscal year. Where does that money come from? Well, the Fed issues Treasury bonds. And the Fed prints the money and buys the Treasury bonds. And that's called monetizing the debt. That never is good for a country when you have to print money to buy your own debt. And that's what's going on now. So that's why I don't see how the Fed could stop their quantitative easing. Because without that $120 billion of buying of U.S. Treasuries, interest rates are going to skyrocket. The only reason why we have such low interest rates in the bond market is because the Fed is buying it. If the Fed wasn't buying it, prices would have to go down, yields would have to go up to attract capital. What kind of investor wants to put their money in a 10-year Treasury bond yielding 1.3% for 10 years? But the Fed can. The Fed don't care about the interest rates. They just care about keeping them low. And the Fed knows better than anybody. They're not saying it, but they know better than anybody. If they stop buying Treasury bonds, interest rates will go up dramatically in the U.S. Treasury bond market, which will feed into everything else, into the housing market, the mortgage market. And now you'll have the U.S. budget deficit skyrocket as well, because now we're paying higher interest on our debt that's ever growing. So they talk a good talk, but they're not going to do it. I doubt it. And if they do, they're going to turn around as soon as they see the first downturn in the stock market. John Castaneda, can't say this guy's name really good. Castaneda is a billionaire owner and CEO of New York City supermarket chain Gristedes. Provides insight into rising consumer prices. He believes that inflation at the gas pump and the grocery aisle isn't going away anytime soon. Inflation is here to stay, he said on Fox Business. Castaneda, who runs the grocery chain in New York and is also in the oil business, and manufacturers are panicking as food, energy, and transportation costs go up. And that's the main driver of inflation. Is supply chain stuff. And we're seeing, and the cost of shipping this stuff. We'll talk about shipping containers in a bit, but just the energy costs to drive a truck and the shortage of truck drivers is adding to all this inflationary pressure. But energy is the main one, because energy goes into everything. You can't produce anything without energy. So as energy prices go up, it affects every business and every manufacturer. And winds up in the final cost of goods and services. But shipping costs now have been a real driver of price increases. It just costs so much to ship something. And it's more dramatic, certainly at overseas shipping. I mean, it's almost impossible. I mean, there's 64 container ships off the coast of California waiting to be unloaded because the ports are so backed up. And the average wait is 8.5 days. Another headline, propane prices soar as inventory concerns mount ahead of winter. Low inventory, rising prices. Supplies are about 20% below the 5-year average at this time of year. The propane surge also comes from the rise in natural gas and crude prices. Propane is a byproduct of natural gas production. Spot propane prices are up more than 60% this year, reaching levels not seen since 2014. And 5% of U.S. households rely heavily on propane to heat their house or for their stove and stuff like that. Now in Europe, natural gas supplies are low, and you've seen record highs, and it's really causing major economic disruptions in Europe. Europe always pays more for energy than most places. They don't have any, so they have to import it, and there's supply shortages. How about this one? And it's all the same thing. It's workers, it's getting supplies in. Restaurants remove crab from menus due to skyrocketing prices. I love crab. And especially in Baltimore, there's a crab meat shortage. Crab meat prices soared to record highs, forcing restaurants to either pass along the cost to consumers or remove crab products from menus. One of the top crab restaurants in Baltimore, Maryland, called Jimmy's Famous Seafood, serves Maryland crab cakes, steamed crabs, crab soup. The restaurant ships crab cakes to consumers all over the country, and recently warned about menu prices have recently increased due to the international crab meat shortage, which has decimated our industry. Crab meat prices are at astronomical levels that are forcing us to remove crab products off our menus. So the price per crab has gone up from $21 a pound to $52 a pound. That's a huge increase. It's astronomical, as they said. So they're taking it off the menu. I mean, people aren't going to pay, $15 for a crab cake. So one of the owners of this restaurant says, quote, "Every supply chain that you look at is broken. Because of the limited labor, because of the limited product out there, products and costs are dramatically increasing." She added chicken wings. Pre-pandemic, they were roughly $45 to $50 a case. Last week, they were $196 a case. That's 400% increase. And chicken wings are great. I love chicken wings too. But I'm not gonna spend $5 each wing. But think about that. I mean, you're talking $45 to $50 a case. Now just under $200 a case. I mean, that's not just a small increase. That's a huge increase. So here, and I'm just pulling out little anecdotes. One of these restaurateurs in Baltimore says, if we raise the price the same amount that crab meat has gone up, it would be $60 a crab cake. No, I think I'd spend my $60 on a lobster or a nice steak dinner. Unbelievable. And that's inflation. And we're seeing it all across. Let's see, what's another one here? Worker shortages, virus, hobble, restaurant recovery. And the National Restaurant Association is basically saying that, restaurants are having an incredible time. First they had to suffer through the COVID shutdowns. It was bad enough. It was horrible. Many of them closed. And then when they were able to open again, gradually, of course, 25% and then 50 and 100, now they're dealing with inflation and shortages. And shortages of workers. I really feel bad for people in the restaurant business. I really do. And now people are starting to get scared with the Delta variant, so now more people are doing takeout. There was an article in the Asbury Park Press, I don't have it in front of me, I think it was yesterday, talking about restaurants and the food costs that they're dealing with. And one of the restaurants was Brazzy's brick oven pizzeria in Manahawk, and I just happened to go there for the first time for dinner on Friday. It's funny that I read that on Saturday, but they're saying that now they're not. The waitress said, I asked if salad comes with the meal, and she goes, no, but for $2.99 we can make you a salad. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And she goes, but if you get a special, you can get a salad. All right, so then I read yesterday that they're doing away with the salads because A, the cost of the produce is high, and a lot of people are eating half of it and they're just throwing it away, and he doesn't have a salad person, so one of the cooks have to go make the salad or they're doing other things. Here's a headline: inflation could cause global collapse. If left unchecked, worldwide inflation could spark a 2008 scale global financial collapse by early 2023, the Bank of Russia warned in its annual monetary policy forecast. Given current levels of public and private debt, there's that word debt again, I was telling you before, it's a debt-based economy worldwide right now. The global economy could deteriorate drastically and rapidly if the U.S. Federal Reserve tightens policy quickly to tame inflation. All right, so the Russian central bank is basically saying that, inflation's here to stay, and the Federal Reserve is saying it's temporary. Surging inflation in Russia is likely to be a long-term problem. Central Bank Governor Elvira Nabiullina said in a recent Financial Times interview. An opinion at odds with those expressed by Fed Chair Jerome Powell and other Western economic leaders. Inflation. I was in Costco yesterday. Now, I mentioned last week or the week before that the last time I was in Costco, I was amazed at how expensive beef is. And, there was 3 nice-sized steaks for $60-something. I was in there yesterday, and there was 3 steaks, total of 4.4 pounds. It was $105 for 3 steaks. I usually come home with some steaks when I go to Costco. I usually get our steaks from there. I couldn't bring myself to pay those prices. And as I said last week, proteins especially are in a big inflationary spike. But if you do away with protein, you'll probably be able to feed yourself. Supply chain shipping hell. Just get me a box, says logistic manager. So 2 years ago, the cost for a 40-foot container, those steel boxes you see on these container ships, right? And usually they're used to transport goods from Asia that are being made in China and Vietnam and Taiwan. And the cost was under $2,000 2 years ago to rent the container to bring your items to the United States. Today it's as much as $25,000. 12 times. If you can get them. And there's a big concern now that, we do have supply problems. There's a lot of concern that there's not going to be a lot on the shelves for Christmas, that the shipping is way behind, and companies are scrambling. Spot rates for container ships to move manufactured products have surged for 20 straight weeks and now stand 731% above their seasonal average of the prior 5 years. All right, I hate to talk about inflation every week, but it's something that's a significant financial problem, especially for low-income families. It's a big problem for emerging markets and third world, where the food budget is a big portion of a family's budget. You have food costs go up even 5 to 10%, and it's a big, big deal for a lot of families. And there was a lot of unrest in 2010, last time we had a food inflation spike. Remember the Arab Spring and all that? That was all based on the cost of food going up. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. People aren't happy when they can't eat and they can't feed their families. And like I said, the Fed has done nothing so far to quell inflation. They're just sitting there watching it. They're keeping interest rates at zero, which is just throwing fuel on it. They're printing money to the tune of $120 billion a month, which is really pouring fuel on it. When they should be doing the opposite. They should be raising rates, and they should be cutting out their printing of money. But as I said earlier, they just can't do it because the whole tent falls apart at that point. All right, time for a break. 732-505-1160 is the call number here. My name's Lou Scatigna. Don't go away.